Hey there folks, welcome back to another video. Today we are taking another look at the Marvel Legends Born Again Daredevil, but not to do a review, but to do some modifications. Now I'm going to start this video off with some modifications that everybody can do at home, just to make this specific figure better. But past that, we're going to be doing some things to customize this into the Season 2 version of the costume. Now, if you've watched or looked at some of the set photos, then you see that it's essentially the exact same suit, except that it's all black. Anywhooser, we're going to be doing some of the modifications to make this more accurate to Season 2. Now, if you've seen the set photos, then you'll see that the suit is essentially the same thing, except all black. We're not doing that. We're not doing the all black version with the red double Ds. I'm doing something a little bit different, but I'll show you how to get to that all black point, and then that'll essentially be the end of the video. The sort of things that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to probably put that into a separate video and upload that after I'm completed with the custom. But the first things that we want to do here is we're going to adjust the shoulder articulation, because I think we can do something really useful here. I was taking a look at this last night and I noticed, okay, so we have this little part right here that sticks out. Now I went ahead and I plugged this back in to make sure that if we sand the surface of this, that we're not like, eliminating the cavity here, that's going to keep it inside. But the bigger thing that we can do is opening up this hole, because even though this is still in the way, if we just make this hole bigger, then it'll be able to move around that more. So we're going to do that, which is very simple. We're just going to widen this hole. Now you could do some other sanding inside of here, inside of this wall here, and then on the inside of this wall to allow for even more shifting. We might do that, we might not. The other thing that we're going to do is, I don't know if I care enough to give him boot swivel, but the least we could do is heat it up and take a look at it, and then, if I don't end up doing anything with that, then I'll just leave it out of the video. And then also we're going to take a look at some options for some hands. Now, to get this exact look, I don't have anything in my collection that will work with this. I took a look at my SH Figuarts Deadpool to see if that was similar, but the colors are not really the same. It's kind of reversed, where the palm is red and then the plate is black. The fingers are still black though, but the hands were too small, so that's not going to work. But if you have the Marvel Legends Deadpool, the Marvel Legends figure, then his hands might be able to work. The other thing that we could do, if you are going to do, go ahead and do the same thing as me and make this the Season 2 suit, then you can use the actual original Netflix hands for this. So I don't like these hands because they're very big from the front perspective, but they're really narrow from the side. But you have you don't need these ones per se, because we have the two gripping hands. But if you want two fisted hands, then you can use the Netflix Daredevil. But again, I'm not a huge fan of these because they look super narrow this way. You can get a better look at that. Super narrow this way, and then front on they look pretty big. So I'm not a fan of that. What I have decided to go with is the Mafex Dark Knight Trilogy Batman hands. And these were something that I was going to use for my custom Netflix version of Daredevil, but I ended up going with the Pattinson hands, the Robert Pattinson Batman hands. So I have two little pegs right here. These are the pegs from the SH Figuarts Deadshot, the Will Smith Deadshot. They fit in the wrists with no modification needed. And they also house the Dark Knight hands with no modification needed. Obviously, that's not the right hand we want, but... So that is the first modification. These hands look close enough to what we see in Daredevil Season 2, so I figured that worked. You still have this cuff here, which kind of eliminates some of the range, but it does allow for a very seamless look. So that's up to you with what you want to do. If you want to, you know, trim some of this away, trim some of this, or trim some of that, that's up to you. For me, I'm not too worried about it right now, because if I want to do something where I need more articulation, then I still have these other options here. Like you can still use these hands and paint the pads black. So there's options. So yeah, I think we've got enough of the kind of game plan out of the way. So just to reiterate one more time, we're going to improve the ab articulation. I showed you an option to use for the hands. We're going to take a look at the boots, see what we can do, and we're also going to take a look at the ab crunch and possibly the hips. But I'm not going to try to spend as much time on that. With the last time we tried to do something like this, they were the biggest videos that I did with my previous editing app, and there was a lot of video overlay, and somehow by that time the entire thing was done, all of the audio was trashed. And I apologize for the people that were looking forward to those videos. Those figures have not been completed yet. I still have recorded some things, and I'll do my best to try to patch together some sort of video to keep you guys entertained, but it's just, it's going to take a lot of time to get those projects together with a completed video. So this time around, we're not going to spend as much time on the modifications, and there's going to be a little bit more editing in this video to kind of get us to where we need to be. So we're going to start off with the shoulders first. Actually, before that, we're already 7 minutes into the video. The things we're going to need a Dremel. So I usually have an actual Dremel, but the battery or the motor's dead on it. I'm not entirely sure. So we're going back to the old Craftsman one that I got from my grandpa. And I think the easiest bit to use right now is just this sanding one. We're going to use that. We're going to stick that right in there and then let it do its thing. If you just have sandpaper, or if you don't have a Dremel, you can just take this and you can widen it and then you can sand it. Which honestly, that might just be a quicker thing to do right now, that we don't have to hook anything up. But yeah, we're going to widen that. So you're going to need a Dremel, an X-Acto blade, possibly some glue. We'll see what we need when we get to that. A hair dryer or hot water. And I think that's pretty much it for right now. Oh, and regardless, you're going to need some fine sandpaper, some high grit sandpaper. So starting off, and I just pushed everything away. I think we're actually just going to use the X-Acto blade for this, because I think that's probably good. Alrighty, so as you can see, we moved out a lot more of that material, and I should have taken this out while I had the chance, but you'll be able to see right here. Let's go ahead and okay, so if we just throw that back in there right now, then we'll be able to see if just by doing that we're able to get a lot more range. And as you can see, that moves a lot more. We're able to pull these arms down. Look at that. So this is actually very good, because I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but when I look at the Born Again Season 2 set photos, when I see Charlie Cox in this costume but in all black, the suit looks bigger. His shoulders look wider. He looks like he's got more defined traps. He looks a little bit meaner, and I think that looks really cool. And the fact that we're able to pull the shoulders down further now, well, actually it doesn't necessarily look like it's further down, but we can pull this piece over the top of that more, and that allows for more smooth transition between the traps and the shoulders. And I feel like when it's all said and done, that's going to make him look a little bit wider instead of having these steps right here. So that might get us to a look where he looks a little bit more intimidating, a little bit wider. But yes, I think that's very cool. Now, for Season 1, like this is based off of I mean, you're not even supposed to see black down here. It's really only supposed to be right up here. So having all of this black exposed does kind of throw off the look of what it should look like for season 1. But since we're doing a season 2 thing, I think that's okay. But for season 1, this might not be the look that you want. But, you know, there's a lot of people who care more about articulation, and that will definitely get you a lot more. You don't necessarily get to cross the arms as much as you might like. It definitely goes in more, I will say that. So be pleased with that, I suppose. I mean, that is more. Maybe not a whole lot more, but it is more. So there's other things that you can do, like sand out the inside of there, but I don't think that's really necessary. It's already a little gappy in there right now. So I think we're just going to leave it with that. So we're just going to do that same thing to this side. Alrighty, so this is what we have so far, and as you can see, we have a lot more movement here. So we covered the hands, we covered the shoulders. Let's just work our way down. We're going to take a look at the ab crunch now. I might not do anything to it because it doesn't really bother me, but we'll see if we can do anything to that. So we're just going to heat it up and pop it off. Okay, guys, so after we heated this up and popped it out, as you can see, we have a big old ball joint down here that actually doesn't really want to come out. And then we just have a peg for the top. So I was wrong in my review when I said I don't think this is actually hitting the hole. I mean, because you'd think it'd get so much more articulation if it was, but as you can see, it's not. So I think the real problem is just sitting so low. If this ball, I mean, they always make the articulation, the pegs on these pieces of articulation, they make them so long. I mean, the ball is basically sitting down here, well, right here. If they had it sitting up higher, then you'd be able to get a better crunch. And I don't really see anything that I can do to make this crunch down further apart from gutting this right here, and I'm not willing to do that because there's already a considerable gap when you lean it back. And unfortunately, you are able to lean it back more than you are able to lean it forward. But for me personally, it's not a big enough deal to where it warrants me cutting more into that. I'm not going to do that. So if you guys want to do that, you want to heat this up and increase the ab articulation, the only thing is that I can think is to cut a notch out here. I don't really see anything else that you can do to increase it. So that's unfortunate. Now moving on to something that'll probably be a little bit more useful is the hips. I think probably just trimming out the top of there will be able to get you more outward movement, not necessarily forward. To get forward movement, you probably got to trim out some of this right here, but I'm not going to do that here today. So let's just heat this up and see what we can do. Okay, so we got those heated up, and thankfully they don't do what they used to do, where they have the softer plastic and then there's a cube inside. So this will be easy enough to just trim this out with an X-Acto knife. It doesn't really need to look pretty. I probably shouldn't do this looking through the camera, but just do something like that. This is going to be trial and error because obviously you don't want to go so close to where you might see it, but you know, something like that. And just do that and pop them back on. We'll see how it looks. Alrighty, so we got those popped back on, and as you can see, we do have an increased range right here. You could definitely push this to get a full split, but I would rather be safe than sorry. I don't want to see it from the top, but you can definitely do that. I mean, I'm not going to do anything to where he needs to have a full split, so for me, this is perfectly fine. But yeah, you can push that a little bit more. As you can see, that's kind of where I stopped. I stopped right where those gray lines are, kind of right down the center. So there's that. Now, moving on to probably the most difficult aspect here, which is not increasing articulation, but adding a whole piece, which is down at the boots. So I'm going to heat these up, and they are glued in place, I would imagine. So just when you're heating this up, just be careful that you're not, stretching anything or damaging it at all. I'm trying to do this as quick as possible to make it so this video isn't going to be incredibly long. So, just be cautious. If I run into anything, then obviously I'll start recording again. Okay, so we finally got it out. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of trial and error. I would probably recommend doing this with hot water over a hairdryer, because every time you go back and you put it in, not only is the water getting inside the boot, but also it's more of a consistent heating process over just waving the hairdryer. That might work out a little bit better. This one came out pretty firm and solid. This one got a lot of tearing on it. So, you would imagine the first thought would be to kind of sand this down into a cylinder, and then you can rotate the boot on that now. But since this got a lot of tearing right at the base, I'm not entirely sure that's the best option. I'm kind of leaning towards more magnet now. Possibly cutting these off right at the base and using them to fill in these holes, and then kind of putting the magnets on more of the surface. You're going to need a pretty decent strength magnet for that, because you don't want the figure to collapse over its own weight, because it's only standing on magnets. So it's kind of a tricky process. If there's other videos on how to do this on Instagram or on YouTube already, I definitely check those out before you attempt what I'm going to do, just because I don't know if it's going to work. So yeah, what I would say the best option to do is definitely go ahead and do that. You can take these off and just be careful. Be very careful on taking them off to make sure you don't damage anything. That way you can put them back on with relative ease if you need to, and then just kind of act as if nothing happened, right? So definitely make sure that's an option, and make sure you're seeing what other people are doing before you go ahead and do anything crazy. Because like I said, I don't know if this is going to work, but I think I have magnets strong enough to do this. The only problem is I would need 4 of them, need to use 4 of them for this, which is a little aggravating just to get a swivel. So I'm not too sure. Okay, so here it is. Pretty much all done with the modifications that we've done. Like I said in the last part, I did 2 separate fixes for this, and I think one of them actually came out better than the other. And surprisingly, the one that took the least amount of time, other than the fact that I went back and fixed it, even then it still took less time, was this one, the magnetic foot. And as you can see, I used 2 big magnets for this one. This one I got a little bit of rippage right there, and that wasn't because this area is too small for this, is because my Dremel slipped. So if you're careful enough, you should be able to get a consistent ring for that to sit in. But look at this. Nice snap, just like I want. You get a nice uninterrupted swivel. And like I said, my Dremel slipped, so it kind of chewed this up just a little bit, unfortunately. Not the end of the world, but it is what it is. And then this side I used just the peg, and honestly it's like I used the peg and then made a swivel. Doesn't really work as well. So I just rounded it out and then filled it up with glue. It can be sanded down and stuff to make it a little bit smoother, but I'm kind of just wanting to move on to the next step. I was worried about these kind of bowing out a little bit too much, and I think this one is also sitting just a slight bit lower. When it was stock, the top of this was covering that little wrinkle right there, so it's just a little bit lower. It's not enough to make it so he's standing crooked or anything like that, but it's just a slight thing. So I have 2 more magnets to do this, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and do this solution on the other side, just not for right now. But I'm glad it works. He's able to stand and stuff like that. Well, if he's balanced or whatever, he's able to stand well enough. But yeah, this took a lot longer, and it still doesn't even really work, trying to get the glue to dry and stuff. So you need 1 more element to do this. You need to buy magnets. You need glue and magnets. For this, you need sandpaper and glue. I also use the Dremel for this as well. You need a Dremel to Dremel out the hole. But, you know, kind of depends on which way you want to go. But anyway, moving on from that, we are going ahead and painting this guy up to get him to look like Season 2 of Daredevil Born Again. So there's a couple of different options that we could have done. We could have dyed him, painted him by hand, or used an airbrush. I've opted to use the airbrush because it's going to be the cleanest method for me. If I go ahead and I dye this, then the dye is not going to cover, it's not going to cover any of the gray that you see because it's paint. It's not going to cover the red that you see here. It's not going to cover the red that you see here. So I'm going to have to break out the black paint anyway. And then also, I want this to have the wear effect that we see with the set photos. So if I dye it, then I'm going to have to not only paint black onto it, I'm also going to have to paint the red. So I figured I might as well just paint it black and not worry about painting it or dyeing it. And the airbrush is going to give us the most even paint coat. So I'm going to start off by popping off the head. Now, there is things that you can do here to minimize paint rub. You know, you can sand the joints down and stuff. It's a lot harder with these figures that have the pinless joints. But there's, you know, there's, what's it called? Texture. There's sculpt inside of the joints and stuff like that. And I don't really want to worry about that and, you know, mess around with that. But I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of just leave it as is because the suit's going to have natural wear on it. So I don't think it's really going to be an issue. So yeah, the biggest spots to worry about are the elbows and the knees. So like if you were super smart, then maybe you could take off the biceps, take the arms off of the biceps, and then take the thighs off, and then dye those. But I'm not too worried about that. So we're gonna go ahead and start painting this with the airbrush. I just have a simple watered down black acrylic paint, and we're going to see how that looks. I also have plastic later on, as you can see, and some cardboard over there to help catch some of the overspray. So keep that in mind. You don't want things getting on stuff you don't want paint. And if you're using an airbrush, then obviously it's going to fly around. So taking a quick peek at this real quick, you can see that it's a little bit more watery than I wanted it to be. So we're going to thicken the paint up just a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and get back to it. You definitely want to paint with thin layers, but this is just, it's essentially just tinted water at this point. It's more like ink. So we're going to thicken that up. So, I opted against just painting the figure. Of course, after I painted most of the figure. For some reason, I've been having a real hard time painting this black. You know, the simplest paint to cover with. I was having a hard time with it. And my airbrush has been sounding a little bit weird, but I know it's not the airbrush because the airbrush is brand new. And for some reason, I've been having this problem with the last couple of airbrushes that I have. So I'm starting to think that my compressor has some sort of issue. It's not pushing out the air properly because I clean out my airbrush, there's nothing in it, and it still makes this ridiculous sound, and it's not pushing out paint the way that it's supposed to. So I went ahead and I got rid of most of the paint work that I did. I don't think it's going to be entirely necessary to get all of it. I'm mostly worried about the joints and stuff like that. So I am mixing him up. As far as proportions go or anything like that, this is just trial and error. I've done this enough times where I just kind of throw it in there and let it go. I'm not too worried about, you know, melting it or anything. There's some good tutorials out there when it comes to actually dyeing stuff. As far as the dye that I'm using, it's RIT Dye More Synthetic. You definitely want to use synthetic. Don't use the regular. But again, there's some good tutorials out there for that. But I'm just dyeing the figure black, and then we're going to go back and paint it just to make sure we cover those gray paint areas like I was talking about. So yeah. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend that this is all said and done. There's some areas that I need to touch up still. You know, just make sure everything's nice and even coat. I went ahead and I added the other magnet to this boot, but I still have yet to do that to both boots on the other side. And then right here is an example of what you might run into. Since I started painting this first like a fool, and I didn't dye it first, I didn't really have much problem with the gray. I just needed to make everything an even coat. So if you go ahead and you dye this, I don't know if that's going to be the same for you. But right here, this little red area and the neck are good examples of what you might run into. Since these areas are painted, the dye is not going to cover that. And then also this is black paint on top of red paint. So like, you know, it's not all consistent right there. Let me zoom in. So this is something I'm going to have to do by hand. It's going to be a little bit tricky because this is an area that's going to get some traffic. So I'm probably going to try to sand inside of here maybe. I don't know how big of a deal it's going to be by the end. But assuming that the Daredevil Born Again Season 2 suit starts pristine like this, this is basically where you want to be. And then you want to do the faint. Well, it's actually not faint. The promo image that they released the last couple of days, that one looks faint. But in the set photos, it looks pretty pronounced. So they're pronounced D. But then you still want to go ahead and make these areas, the knee pads. Although these look like fabric knee pads right here. With the Season 2 suit, they look like urethane pieces, like the belt, the gloves, these little decorative pieces up here, and then the boots. Those are all a shinier black. So for me personally, the color that I like to use is licorice. I don't use a gloss black very often. This licorice color is very nice. It does say gloss finish, but it just, you know, this specific paint works a little bit nicer for me than regular gloss black. And then also another thing is this catching light really nicely right here, but if I take it out of the light, then it just looks flat black. The suit looks very similar to how the normal Daredevil suit looks, and then the Netflix series Daredevil, where it had the very, you know, had the kind of the glossy screen printing, so it would catch light. So for me, I'm going to give this a nice spritz of what's matte finish, but the one that I have that I use sometimes, it kind of creates a speckling effect. So I'm going to do that. It's going to help seal in the color, obviously, but then it's also going to give it a bit of a shine, even though it says matte. It's not really what it's not really good for that. Okay, so we're about where we need to be to start painting some of these details. And I do want to preface real quick. You can see that sort of speckling that I was talking about. That's what I was trying to achieve, to get, you know, highlights and then also some of the flat areas. But for some reason, the camera and the lights are just really making this look a lot shinier than it is. In person, it has a pretty close, you know, it's pretty close to what I wanted to do. But like right here, the shoulder looks glistening. So, yeah. Like I said, I was just kind of spraying it with a quote-unquote matte spray, but it's not really matte. So I just sprayed it and give it a little spritz, and it gave it this dotting effect. So that was kind of like the idea, but, you know, on camera, it's looking a little bit questionable. Hopefully, when we add some of this enamels paint here, we'll be able to see a more of a striking difference between what are supposed to be urethane pieces and fabric pieces, and water that down a little bit, and then we'll get started. All right, so I don't know if that helps at all, but like, again, you can see that these areas are slightly more shiny. So if you're going with the clean look, the boots still need to be painted technically, but if you're going with the cleaner look from Born Again Season 2, this is basically all you need to do for the body, except for obviously doing the D and then the head. I haven't done anything to the head yet because I'm still trying to decide if I want to, because I have two here. And I like this matter one. And I would like to leave this for the regular Daredevil because he definitely has a thicker beard going on for Born Again Season 1 than he does 2. So then that would lead me to use this one. And also the nose is exposed a little bit more on this one, so I think this is a better head. So if I have to do modifications to this one, I might as well, use this one anyway. The problem that I'm running into is, this might be too dark now, but the problem that I'm running into is I don't know if I want to completely remove the beard and do my own. But for the people that don't want to do that, then obviously you'd just go ahead and you'd paint this black and then you do the necessary wear. The horns, these plastic areas right here, they're going to be a shinier black. If you go ahead and paint this all black and you want it to be accurate, the eyes, the lenses should be red, and then these should be a shinier black. So that's all you got to do. And for some reason, I didn't know this before, but for some reason Hasbro made this neck area black or blue, and then this is black. So that's a little silly. Okay, so this is the finished product. I'm assuming this is kind of what it's going to look like at the start of Season 2. The fresh paint job, and then just the painted on Ds. These could use a little bit more paint work right here, and then I haven't completely covered the mask because I'm going to do the weathered version of this, but I figured at least for the video, this is enough to get the idea across. I also have to go through and do the licorice color for the boots, but I did get those both finished, so they both have the magnets right there. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it. There's going to be some of the red that's coming through here, and then some of the silver areas like the buckles and stuff need to get kind of scraped away so you can see that silver. That we're going to do that in a part 2. And then also the billy clubs have to be painted black. We'll do that in a separate video as well. But these need, just the D logo needs to be cleaned up, but, you're going to have to use your imagination for that. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, notification bell. And of course, until next time, true believers.